I wonder if you've ever gone through something in your life where you had a plan, it was all going to work out, and maybe you believe that if you pray about it, God's going to answer. You knock, the door is going to open, you can claim it, you can believe it, and you had faith that God was going to come through for you, but the door just did not open. If so, I want to show you that, yeah, God does come through for you, and it can be an instant thing, but it doesn't always work that way. More often than not, when you are struggling through a situation and you want victory and God has given you a promise, it happens, but it doesn't happen quick. So let's see what the Bible says about it. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, God tells the Israelites, I'm taking you to Canaan, and when you get there, I'm going to give you this land. There are 7 nations there. I'm going to drive all of those nations out. So there it is. It's a promise. It is a big promise. You weren't a people. You didn't have your own country. You weren't even really recognized around the world, but I am going to take you and make you a nation. I'm going to give you your own territory. I mean, that is a big promise. And I wonder if God's ever given you a promise that you heard when somebody was preaching, or you were reading the Bible and it jumped out at you, or God gave you a prophetic word. At some point in your life, you got a promise from God. Maybe when you were a little kid, you had a dream, you had a vision, you knew what your life was going to be. But for some reason, at this point, it hasn't worked out. Yet there is a promise deep inside of your heart. That's where the Jews were at in this situation. They had a promise. They were going to the promised land. But then in verse 17 now of that same chapter, God says, well, what's going to happen though is you're going to get there, see these big nations, and you're going to say, wow, I don't know if we can take them. This is too big. This is too much for me. Because you see, when God gives you a promise, it is often way bigger than you can imagine. And we set out excited, passionate, ready to go for it. But then we realize this dream is bigger than me. I can't do this on my own. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. I don't have the gifting. I don't have the connections. I don't know how to do this. And that's when the discouragement sets in. It feels like the promise will never come to pass. And I wonder if you've gotten to that place in your life where what God promised you hasn't happened yet. You may have felt encouraged along the way, hearing messages like, hey, God's going to do it for you right now. You just believe it. God's going to come through for you. But then you get setback after setback, and you start feeling like it will never happen, like you're not capable of doing this. And then the discouragement sets in. Well, that's when God in the next verse says, when you start to feel that way, remember what I did for you in Egypt and how I handled Pharaoh. You see, God starts reminding us, it feels like I'm not going to come through for you. It feels like I'll never be there for you. I know you're discouraged. But what about that time in your life when you felt this same way and you didn't know how you was going to get out that situation, but I showed up for you. I was there for you. I know it feels like God's not hearing your prayers and he's not there for you right now, but I want you to remember a time where it looked like there was no way out. You were stuck. It was impossible, but somehow or another it worked out. That was the hand of God moving in your favor and opening a door for you. And if he was faithful then, he is faithful now. Don't forget what God has done for you. And whenever that happens, you get those encouraging thoughts and you say, yeah, God did come through for me 3 years ago, so he can come through for me today. You get encouraged, and that's good to be encouraged. But then what happens when you hope again? And then that hope falls through again. Well, that's when God in the Bible shows up for the Israelites and shows them what is going to happen. He tells them, I will go into this land with you and I will drive those nations out little by little. He didn't say he was going to do it all of a sudden. In fact, he said he wasn't going to do it so quickly. Could it be that God actually is working even though we don't see it? Could it be that he's doing things behind the scenes? God is working on your situation. He is moving things into place. He is aligning the events, but it is happening little by little. He's slowly working on that person's heart. He's slowly bringing you through and out of that addiction. He's gradually breaking that sin off of your life. But why? Well, he tells the Jews why. He says, if I do it quickly, the wild animals would become too numerous for you. You see, the Canaanites who lived there knew how to deal with those wild animals. It's like where I'm from in South Louisiana, we got alligators. Those things are so normal to us. My grandparents used to walk alligators on leashes like little puppy dogs. But people from other states come down here and see these big dinosaur looking things and panic and freak out or take pictures, and I'm like, man, it's an alligator. We know what to do and what not to do around them. We know where to shoot them if we need to kill them. None of us down here in Louisiana are worried about alligators. Why? Because we are familiar with the land and we know how to handle it. The Canaanites knew how to deal with the wild animals. The Jews had never been to that country and did not know how to deal with them. So if God did a quick work, then the wild animals would have become too numerous for them. So I got a question for you. What wild animals in your life is God trying to keep at bay? You see, he could just give you $1 million today, but what would that do to you? Are you ready to handle that kind of responsibility? Or would the power or the influence or the increase come on you so suddenly that you not have the capabilities to withstand the pressures that would come along with it? You say, God, give me a breakthrough, but God doesn't want anything to break you. So will he give you a bigger ministry? Yes, but not with all the pride, not with the selfish ambition. Will he bless your marriage? Yes, but let's deal with that lust problem. Otherwise, it'll get worse down the road, because when you got small issues in your life, but then you step into some of the blessings you've been asking God for and your life increases, all of those things get exposed. So God has to deal with our hearts and prepare us by allowing us to go through the process little by little, so that yes, he can bless us, but that our blessings not become a curse in the process. That's why Hebrews 10:36 says that we have need of patience, that after we've done the will of God, we will obtain the promise. So the Bible says we'll get what God promised us, but we have to have patience before we do it. The delay is not on God. He actually does want to do it immediately, but he cares about us enough to allow us to develop the patience that we need to sustain that blessing. So once we develop that patience, then we get the promise. And I know we've been patient already. So God, I'm already patient. I'm so patient, you should give it to me now. But why, seriously speaking, do we need patience? Well, James chapter 1 tells us to count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So maybe I'm lacking things that I'm going to need at that next level that God is developing in me now in order to handle what it is I'm asking him to give me. Perhaps I need to learn to actually love people, as in keep no record of being wrong, not being selfish, not being irritable, the way the Bible describes love. Maybe I need to learn to be content with who I am and with what I have, so that when God blesses me with more, I don't make that the object of my contentment. It is all a process. But in the end of the chapter in Deuteronomy, God then tells the Jews, I will take you to this land and I will turn the kings over to you. You will completely destroy them. This will be your victory. You see, God will come through for you, but in more cases than not, it is a process. God is developing you. He is working in you what needs to be put in you and taking out of you what needs to come out of you in order to walk into everything he has for you. And in order to complete this process, we often need to commit all the way to it, not just when it's convenient, which is why I published Convenient or Committed, Discovering Your Purpose and Making Life Count. This helps us to go all into the purposes and the promises of God, even when following that process hurts, is sacrificial, and takes commitment. So I've linked it for you in the description below, and let's stay connected through the subscribe button and notifications bell so we can see each other in the next video together.